Before today's story, remember to subscribe and leave a like. This helps us dream of a better day. Today we are going to talk about Nathan Brooks, the young South American boy who silenced a whole room. Nathan stood frozen in front of the grand piano, the weight of dozens of eyes resting heavily. Oh, oh, oh. This was a setup, a trap. Ms. Harrison, the music teacher, stood beside him with her arms crossed and a cold smirk on her lips. Come on, Nathan. Or do you not know how to play? She challenged. Nathan knew exactly what this was. She didn't want to hear him play. She wanted to embarrass him. She wanted to prove he didn't belong there. But what no one knew, not even her, was that Nathan was about to do something that would leave every person in that room completely speechless. It was a cloudy morning when Nathan Brooks walked through the gates of Madison Elite High School, one of the most prestigious schools in New York City. He held his backpack tightly, forcing himself to ignore the curious stares and hushed whispers from students in polished shoes and designer uniforms. He already knew this place wasn't going to be welcoming. Madison Elite was a school for the privileged, wealthy teens who had never known struggle, who saw hardship only in textbooks. Nathan came from a modest neighborhood and had earned his place there through a full scholarship, granted because of his exceptional musical talent. But none of that seemed to matter. Nobody was impressed by him here. In fact, most barely acknowledged his presence. As he wandered through the glossy hallways, trying to find his classroom, a sharp voice called out, "You must be the new student, Nathan Brooks." He turned and saw a tall woman with stern eyes and silver hair tied tightly in a bun. Her posture was flawless, her tone clipped and firm. It was Ms. Harrison, the music teacher. "Yes, ma'am," Nathan replied politely. She gave him a quick look, scanning him from head to toe with pursed lips. "I hope you're prepared. Discipline at this school is taken seriously," she said, curtly, before turning and disappearing into the music room. Nathan followed her with cautious steps, already feeling that something wasn't right. As soon as he entered the classroom, Nathan noticed the stark difference. Students sat in neat, perfect rows, their backs straight, their uniforms flawless, as if they were silently competing to appear the most refined. The room sparkled, every instrument looked brand new, and the sheet music was arranged with surgical precision on every desk. Nathan looked around. He was the only black student in the room. He noticed the fleeting glances, the quiet whispers, the subtle snickers. But what hurt the most wasn't the students. It was the way Ms. Harrison acted as if he didn't exist. She walked among the desks, offering warm compliments to the students she already knew. "Excellent work, Emily. I expect great things from you this year." "Ah, Charles, bringing your own sheet music again. Very dedicated." Nathan stood quietly by the door, waiting for her to address him, to tell him where to sit. She said nothing. Finally, when a student raised their hand and asked, "Where is he going to sit?" Ms. Harrison turned slowly, her expression blank. "Oh, right, the new student," she said, as if she had just remembered he was there. She pointed to an isolated bench in the back of the room. "You can sit there, Nathan. Let's see if you can keep up." Nathan nodded and walked to the back without a word. He opened his bag and pulled out a small notebook where he often scribbled melodies. He tried to settle in, but it became clear that Ms. Harrison had no intention of including him. Instead of welcoming him to the class, she made a speech that only widened the gap. "Today, we'll discuss the importance of tradition in classical music," she said, crossing her arms. "Not everyone is born with the kind of refinement required for this art form, but here we teach true classical discipline." Her tone wasn't subtle. It was clearly aimed at him. Some students smiled faintly, sensing the insult. Nathan remained quiet. He had been through worse. He knew words wouldn't change anything. When she began handing out sheet music, she passed him by completely. Nathan looked around, confused. He raised his hand. "Excuse me, Ms. Harrison, where's mine?" She didn't even look at him. "Perhaps it's better if you just listen today," she said sharply. "Learn first, then try to follow." Laughter echoed softly from the corners of the room. Nathan felt his face burn, but he took a deep breath and sat still. He had seen this before. He didn't need to prove anything. Not yet. What Ms. Harrison didn't know was that the boy she was trying to diminish had a gift that would soon shake the very walls of that classroom. The week went by, and nothing changed. Ms. Harrison never invited him to play. Other students were encouraged, given feedback, allowed to make mistakes. Nathan remained invisible, a ghost in the back row. Then Friday came. Ms. Harrison stood at the front of the room and folded her arms. Today, we'll evaluate everyone's progress. I want each of you to perform something you've learned so far. Students began to prepare. Emily went first, playing a simple piece by Beethoven. Miss Harrison smiled and nodded with approval. Charles followed with a Chopin etude, missing a few notes but still receiving gentle encouragement. Then, Miss Harrison turned her eyes directly on Nathan. "Nathan," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm, "why don't you show us what you know?" Nathan froze. He was stunned. She had barely acknowledged his existence all week. And now, in front of everyone, she wanted him to play. He could feel it. This wasn't an opportunity. It was a setup. "Go ahead, Nathan," one student whispered with a grin. "Or do you not know how to play?" Ms. Harrison repeated with a raised eyebrow. That hit him hard. He could see it in her eyes. This was her moment to prove he didn't belong. He could have said no, could have refused. But instead, Nathan stood up. He walked slowly to the grand piano in the center of the room. "Let's see what you're capable of," Ms. Harrison said with a smug look. Nathan sat down, closed his eyes, and placed his fingers gently on the keys. The room went still. Then, he began to play. The first notes were soft, delicate, and deeply emotional. They carried sorrow, longing, beauty. But as his fingers danced across the keys, the music grew. Powerful, bold, transformative. Every note told a story. Every chord carried his soul. What no one in that room realized was that Nathan didn't need sheet music. He played by ear, with a natural grace and intensity that no one else could match. He wasn't following a page, he was following his heart. The students, who moments earlier had been laughing and whispering, now sat frozen. Some widened their eyes, others exchanged stunned glances. Even Charles, the once confident favorite, seemed unsure. Nathan wasn't just playing. He was commanding the room with every keystroke. The laughter had vanished. The judgment had melted. Now there was only awe. Ms. Harrison's expression changed too. For a brief moment, her confidence cracked. Her eyes flickered with something she hadn't expected: doubt, shock, even fear. She hadn't anticipated this. She hadn't expected the boy she tried to humiliate to be the most gifted musician in the room. But there he was, pouring his soul into every note, every measure, silencing every whisper, and shaking every bias. When the last note faded into silence, no one spoke. The room was completely still. Nathan slowly raised his head and looked directly at Ms. Harrison. She blinked, clearly uncomfortable, unable to hide. Her unease. He didn't need to say a word. The music had already said everything. The silence lingered in the air, thick with emotion and disbelief. No one knew how to react. The same students who had mocked him now sat with their mouths slightly open, completely stunned. Emily glanced at Charles, who simply shrugged, trying to process what had just happened. Others whispered under their breath, still in shock at what they had just witnessed. But the most noticeable reaction was from Ms. Harrison herself. She shifted awkwardly in her chair, her proud demeanor crumbling. Her superiority had vanished, replaced with a rare uncertainty. She cleared her throat, trying to reclaim control. "Well, interesting," she muttered, folding her arms. Nathan kept his gaze fixed on her, waiting, hoping, for some acknowledgement, a word of recognition, a nod of respect, anything. But instead, she stood up and turned away. "Well then, let's move on. Next, student." Murmurs rippled through the classroom. Some students exchanged incredulous looks. "That was amazing," Emily said aloud, looking around. "He was incredible," added another student from the back. Nathan didn't need more than that. He understood what Ms. Harrison couldn't admit. She didn't want to recognize his talent. She had hoped he'd fail, but now that he had stunned the room, she preferred to pretend it hadn't happened. Nathan felt a mix of frustration and strength rise in his chest, but he stayed firm. He no longer needed her approval. The truth was now undeniable, and everyone had seen it. What he didn't yet know was that this story was far from over, and that Ms. Harrison's attempt to dim his light would come at a price. The class ended, but the weight of what had happened remained thick in the air. A few students slowly approached Nathan, their expressions a mix of amazement and guilt. "Dude, where did you learn to play like that?" It was Charles, the same boy who once smirked at him, but now his voice was filled with genuine admiration. Nathan offered a small smile. "I've always loved music," he replied simply. Even Emily, who had never spoken to him before, came over. "That was incredible," she said softly. "You play better than anyone here. Better than some professionals I've heard. Nathan thanked them, but inside, he still felt the weight of everything that had happened. He knew better than to be naive. Ms. Harrison wouldn't let this go. And he was right. In the next class, Ms. Harrison tried to pretend as if none of it had happened. She called on the same students, gave them the piano, praised their progress, but Nathan ignored completely. Emily, please play the passage we rehearsed. Charles, try that section again. Her voice moved around the room, never toward him. Nathan raised his hand. Ms. Harrison, what about me? The room fell silent. Some students turned toward him, waiting for her reply. Ms. Harrison crossed her arms and forced a polite smile. Nathan, I think we've seen enough. Clearly you prefer improvising over structure, and here we value discipline. Her tone was cold, icy. Nathan swallowed hard. He knew exactly what that meant. No matter how talented he was, to her, he would never be enough. But this time, he wasn't alone. That's not fair, Emily said suddenly, her voice steady. She looked straight at Ms. Harrison. Charles nodded beside her. He plays better than all of us, and you still won't give him a chance. Other students began murmuring in agreement. Ms. Harrison's expression faltered. For the first time, she was losing control of the room. This isn't a debate, she snapped. I'm the teacher. I decide who plays and who doesn't. But just then, a deeper voice echoed from the doorway. Interesting. And, as the principal of this school, I decide who is fit to teach here. Everyone turned. Standing in the doorway was Mr. Reynolds, the principal of Madison Elite High School. The room went silent. Ms. Harrison's face turned pale. Nathan looked at him, stunned. He had no idea how long the principal had been standing there, but his eyes said it all. He had heard enough. Mr. Reynolds, Ms. Harrison said, forcing a nervous smile. This isn't what it looks like. I'm just trying to maintain classroom order. He raised a hand to stop her. Why don't we let Nathan show us what he can do? Nathan nodded. This was his moment. He walked to the piano once again, calm and composed, but this time he wasn't playing to prove anything. He was playing to show who he truly was. His fingers touched the keys, and once more the room was filled with music. But not just notes. Emotion, soul, a story. Every crescendo, every pause, every chord carried something more. Pain, strength, beauty, and truth. When he finished, the room sat in stunned silence. Then, the principal applauded. Brilliant, Mr. Reynolds said. This is what we call a gift, and a gift like that should be celebrated, not ignored. He turned to Ms. Harrison, now visibly shaking. And I'd like to know why such talent was completely dismissed in your class. Ms. Harrison stammered. I was only trying to keep order. I didn't treat him differently. I just didn't think he was ready to perform in front of the class. Murmurs broke out. Everyone in the room knew she was lying. The principal raised an eyebrow. Then why didn't you give him the same opportunity as everyone else? He hesitated. There was no answer. The truth was written all over the students' faces. And it was written all over hers, too. Nathan stepped forward. His voice was calm, but unwavering. Since I got here, you ignored me. I noticed the looks, the tone, the way you treated me differently. But what hurts the most isn't what you did to me. It's wondering how many other students before me went through the same thing and never got the chance to show what they could do. The classroom was still. Some students lowered their heads, others nodded slowly. Mr. Reynolds took a breath and looked at Ms. Harrison. A student's talent should never be dimmed by prejudice, he said firmly, and I cannot allow behavior like this to continue in my school. Her eyes widened. What are you saying? I'm terminating your contract, he said plainly. You are no longer a part of Madison Elite High School. Gasps filled the room. Some students stared in disbelief. Others gave small, relieved smiles. Ms. Harrison stood frozen. Principal, please. But he had already turned away. Collect your things. You have until the end of the day. She looked around, hoping for support, but found none. Even the students who once sought her approval remained silent. Without another word, she gathered her materials and left the classroom, head bowed. As the door closed behind her, it felt like the entire room exhaled at once. After Ms. Harrison left the room, a strange silence lingered, not of fear or confusion, but of relief. It was as if the air had finally cleared. The students sat quietly, trying to process what had just happened. For many, it had been an unexpected twist. For Nathan, it was proof that justice may take time, but it always arrives. Principal Reynolds turned to Nathan and gave a small but proud smile. Nathan, your talent is extraordinary, and I can't let that go unnoticed. Nathan looked at him, surprised. What do you mean, sir? The school is hosting our annual gala concert this semester, the principal said. It's our most important event of the year, with distinguished guests, alumni, and scouts from conservatories across the country. And I want you to be our featured pianist. Gasps echoed throughout the classroom. Are you serious? Emily asked, eyes wide with excitement. This is amazing, said Charles, genuinely impressed. Nathan's heart began to race. He had been through so much: humiliation, exclusion, silence, and now he was being recognized in front of everyone, in the most honorable way. But even in that moment, doubt crept in. Sir, what about the other students? He asked quietly. I just got here. Maybe they deserve the chance more than I do. The principal smiled again. Nathan, talent doesn't come with a timeline. You earned this. Now it's your time to shine. Nathan looked around the room. For the first time since he arrived, he didn't feel like an outsider. Emily lightly tapped his shoulder and said, You deserve this, Nathan. We all know it. He took a deep breath, his eyes misting. Slightly. This wasn't just about playing. This was about belonging. I accept, he said, voice steady. The classroom erupted in applause. For the first time since he walked through the gates of Madison Elite High School, Nathan Brooks felt like he truly belonged. The gala night. The night of the gala arrived. The auditorium of Madison Elite High School was transformed. Elegant lights, velvet curtains, sparkling chandeliers, and a stage shining under spotlights. The seats were filled with students, parents, teachers, and special guests. At the center of the stage stood a magnificent grand piano. Backstage, Nathan stood in a black suit, breathing deeply. It was the biggest moment of his life. You ready? Emily asked, smiling from beside him. More than ever, he replied. Principal Reynolds stepped onto the stage and approached the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, tonight we have a special gift to share. A student who reminds us all that art has no color, no status, and no limits. He came to us recently, but his music has already left a permanent mark. Please welcome Nathan Brooks. The audience erupted in applause as Nathan walked onto the stage. He sat at the piano, closed his eyes, and let the music begin. The melody was powerful, raw, emotional, honest. It wasn't just performance, it was a story told through keys and chords. A story of being silenced and then rising above, of exclusion turned into applause. Each note carried weight, each progression built a new layer of emotion, and everyone in the room felt it. Some closed their eyes and let the music carry them. Others watched, completely mesmerized. Even teachers wiped away tears. It was more than music. It was truth. When the final note faded, a moment of stunned silence swept the auditorium. Then, the entire room exploded in applause. Nathan stood up slowly and looked out at the audience. He had never felt anything like it. Not just praise, but true recognition. In the front row, Principal Reynolds smiled proudly and gave him a respectful nod. He didn't need to say a word. Nathan had already said everything with his music. A few days later, Nathan received a letter in the mail. It was a full scholarship offer to one of the most prestigious conservatories in the country. His talent had been noticed far beyond the walls of Madison Elite. Now the world wanted to hear him play. As for Ms. Harrison, no one ever spoke of her again at the school. Her dismissal became a quiet reminder that prejudice can delay a dream, but it can never destroy it. That day, Nathan learned a truth he would carry forever. Justice may take time, but it always comes. And when it does, no one can stop your light from shining. Now I'll ask you, have you ever had to prove your worth to someone who doubted you? What did you do? If this story moved you, follow us for more inspiring stories like this one. Nathan's journey is a reminder to us all. Never let someone else decide your value. Thank you for staying until the end. Leave your comment to support Nathan and remember to like and subscribe to the channel. See you tomorrow.